The Baroque spread out through many countries, especially the Catholic ones, and was certainly welcomed in France as it represented the king there, if you will. I mean, if there's a Baroque king, it's definitely Louis XIV. Louis built a brand new palace during the Baroque period, and it was the greatest Baroque palace ever built, and he built that at Versailles. Versailles was one of those buildings that just defied, everything, because it was just so big and it was so opulent. He was wanting to impress people, of course. It is enormous. I can't even tell you. But he began the structure by remodeling the existing hunting lodge of his father. He was in love with the idea of having everybody who was in his court there present, so he made it huge. He wanted it to house a court of 100,000 people. The architects were Lavaux and Lebrun, and André Lenotre was the garden designer. They had worked together previously, but this is going to be really the masterpiece of integrating the garden into the structure. So let's look how the building emerges. It's going to be this little small hunting lodge. And what Louis is going to do, and there he is, and there is no one more Baroque than Louis. Look at how, out there he is, larger than life, thought he had great legs. He loved women. His life was over the top. Truly. It's reflected in this structure. I just can't see anything that's more Baroque than Louis' Versailles. He loved women. He loved ceremony. We see all these, events happening there. He loved to be the center of attention. His wife was not someone he loved so much in the beginning. That's their child. But he had plenty of mistresses, and this is one of them. This is another one of them. And I actually read something that he had, they think, well over 80 children. That's not verified. I just thought that was interesting. Versailles becomes this sprawling structure, which includes this. And look at how far it extends. And look at the gardens. The gardens are magnificent. They're so much a part of what Louis wanted, because he loved the gardens. He loved sports. He liked tennis. He loved hunting. And so this was a part of it for him. And we know that Lenotre did a wonderful job, because we see it in the very terraced look of the gardens at Versailles. The greatest part of the building is the Hall of Mirrors, and that's right back here. It was this large hallway that he used for banquets. It was over 10,000 people could fit in there. It was 3/4 of a football field long. We'll get to there. But here's what you saw when you approached the entranceway. Look at all the gold. The kings of France, there's busts of them looking down here at you as you walk in. And there's the facade of the the Hall of Mirrors. It's called that. There it is again, because it's got mirrors in it that reflect the outside. But look at all the fountains. I mean, Lenotre did an amazing job. It is a huge place. It had an orangery. This is like a hothouse. And the Hall of Mirrors was the crowning jewel of the entire structure. Again, plenty of gold. Look at that. It reflects that opulence. It was actually mirrors that were done in Venice. And it's a play on, look at how much I have, observe what I do. There's no doubt about it. This was all about Louis. Louis called himself the Sun King. And so this doesn't do it justice. You really don't see it well in pictures. It's an enormous structure. I've only been there once. I was there when I was, I think I was 12 with my father. I just remember it was so big. Unfortunately, during the French Revolution, the original furniture was destroyed. But here's those mirrors, and you could see they reflect the outside in, and he loved that. His throne room, again, look at all of the gold and it's just an amazing building. His formal bedroom, this is where people would watch him get up in the morning. And again, look at all the detailing. So if you see anything that's very lush over the top like that, you're probably looking at something that is Baroque. When we move outside of France, we move towards the area that today is the Netherlands, but in this period, this was Flanders, a Roman Catholic country. And it was dominated, the art there, by Peter Paul Rubens. Rubens was trained in Antwerp as an artist, and he was, definitely an admirer of Caravaggio. He was very influential for not only his artistic ability, but also for his intellect. He spoke many languages, and he was a diplomat as well. He was a prolific painter. If there's a time when being an artist is lucrative, he definitely was living in it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Here he is with his first wife, Isabella, and this is their wedding portrait. And you can see by his clothing, he's just living the good life, living the dream. Look at all the silk and the lace. And his wife was that beautiful ruff, that's called, that collar. I mean, it just shows you how prosperous he was. There's a lot of debate on how many images Rubens created and actually he painted in them himself, how many were there. But no matter what, his work is tremendous. It's large. It's dynamic. Look at that strong vertical line. This is a triptych. The women are bigger, zaftig, more fleshy. That was the style. And we see that again and again and again. Look at the musculature of the men and how things kind of move around the middle here. He's a genius. Swirling compositions. He likes these kind of reddish tint. Everything kind of looks kind of pinkish. And if you want to see how big it is, these are big paintings. The largest private collection of Rubens in the country is in Sarasota, the Ringling Museum. That's where this is from. And so you could actually go and see a Rubens. You can see these giant paintings. His work reflects the opulence, again, of the period. I think he very much does encapsulate the ideology, of the Baroque. It wasn't about being restrained. It wasn't about being modest. It was about being out there. And the Roman Catholic Church used this as a tool. So really we see art starting to become almost a propaganda tool here. His women are easy to spot. Today, I know people would consider them overweight, but in this period, they're perfect. Unfortunately, his first wife died, and he married his second wife, Helena Vermont, and she reflects this type of female he was so enraptured with. Here we have the rape of the daughters of Leucippus. And again, you see those very fleshy women. And look at that circling. Look at how that horse's hoof push you down. His second wife, Helena Vermont, made him very happy. This is their son. And yes, it is a boy. Boys wore dresses until they were breeched. Boys don't start wearing pants, little boys, until really little Lord Fauntleroy made that kind of popular, believe it or not. I know it's hard for us to believe, but this was his love of his life, Helena, and he was very happy with her. She inspired him to paint the Toilette of Venus, or Venus at a Mirror. And here she is in an image called The Little Fur. Rubens did well. He prospered as a painter. He prospered as an artist. One of the few people you can honestly say that about in the history of art. And here's his house at Steen. And you can see by the size of it, he did quite well. And here he is as he got older. So he's done very well for himself. Now, he was the great, if you will, Roman Catholic painter of the northern part of Europe. But it will be his contemporary, who was Dutch, so it was from Holland. Again, today, this is the Netherlands. And it was Rembrandt, who really became the most famous. You can buy tons of Rubens. You can't buy tons of Rembrandt. First of all, he's hard to authenticate. But here he is. As a young man, he did lots of self-portraits. And again, he owes a lot of his look in his work to Caravaggio. So his Caravaggio may have been controversial in his own right, but he definitely was one of the great painters of the age. He's in a class by himself, though, Rembrandt. Because of all the Baroque painters, he's the most introspective. He explores the psychological side of his sitters. You see more of their, insights into themselves, really, if you will. Here's his self-portrait, his wedding portrait to Saskia, his first wife. And she was quite wealthy and well-connected, and her family managed to get him quite a few commissions. This is him and her. They look very happy. He begins to do all of these images from guilds. Now, when you're a Dutch painter in the Protestant world, you have to work harder because you don't have the Catholic Church as a patron. You don't have those big monarchs, like Louis. You have to seek things out, commission. So they did a lot of group work, group images. This is the Wool Merchants Guild. And a guild is like a union. And he did this anatomy lesson of Dr. Tulp. The doctors all hired him. So he was making a good living. He was a very popular painter. His iconic work is, here he is, talking about self-portraits as he ages. You begin to see him. I love these. There's a great book called In Rembrandt's Eyes. We really start to see the development of Rembrandt as a human. And then he does The Night Watch. This is his last very popular work because his wife dies after this. And he lost favor. He wasn't as popular. This is The Night Watch. These are the forerunners to the modern day police. And you can see here the guardian angel representing them. Look at that great dynamic diagonal there. You see that kind of framing the center here. He becomes more hard to pinpoint as to style. This is how big this piece is, by the way. It's quite large. Again, big was in for the Baroque. And he actually begins to have an affair with Heinrike, the woman who's taking care of his son. Here she is as Bathsheba. He kind of lives on the fringes of society at this point. And we start to see him doing more and more religious work. Now remember, he's Protestant. There's really not a market for these in the Protestant countries. The church doesn't buy them, but these are what fulfills him. The prodigal son is one of his most famous images. Also notice how his brushstroke becomes looser. And this is one of the reasons why he's so difficult to authenticate. Rembrandt's works are some of the most expensive in the world. In the history of art, generally, really. And then, at the end of his life, he is very poor. He starts to do prints. and we have the most famous 100 Guilders print. Just people have found, there's been a couple found. I've heard stories that there are some more out there, but it is one of his last things he does. And there he is at the end of his life. So kind of a sad story of a brilliant man. He didn't make anywhere near the money Rubens did, but still we look at him as perhaps being the most profound painter of the Baroque period. I hope you all enjoyed this lecture and that you understand a little bit more about the Baroque. It's dynamic, it's dramatic, it's full of emotions, and it's very different from anything we've seen before. Have a good day, everyone. Peace out. Don't forget to subscribe.